Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Legendary Aspects. Today we're going to be looking at the legendary aspect known as the Wind Striker. The Wind Striker aspect is an interesting one for boots. I believe it's mobility, so it's boots and amulets only. And basically what it gives you is critical strikes grant you up to 16% movement speed, so 8 to 16% movement speed for 1 second up to 6 seconds. And this basically means that by utilizing it, you can get some pretty crazy movement speed increases. When you attack, it doesn't really take very long before you will crit, and once you crit, you'll gain the additional movement speed. I believe the movement speed is right here. Now, the interesting thing here is that it does stack with other abilities, which is pretty cool. So, when you're utilizing something like Ravenous, as an example, and you have an additional movement speed created by an item like this, you can actually gain more attack speed. And as you stack attack speed or movement speed from other sources, like, for instance, Moonrise, which gives 15% movement speed, as well as the critical strikes from the Wind Strikers, which gives an additional movement speed as well. You can actually stack the Ravenous increase in attack speed by stacking the movement speed. So here's an example. So when I start out, I'm sitting at 50.5, and if I stack a little bit of movement speed here, let's go ahead and stack our Moonrise and our Wind Strikers. Now we're sitting at 62.5% increase attack speed instead, which is pretty nice. So we're scaling that by going up even higher. And this is one of the ways that you can utilize the Wind Strikers to get an interesting increase in your movement speed, which also gives you an increase in your attack speed. And of course, having an increase of movement speed is not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, if you can run faster, you can get in between your targets quicker. So as you're running around dishing out damage, you can, of course, run in between your targets more quickly. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to have increase of movement speed. The main issue is that it only lasts 6 seconds. And that's only if you stack it up to 6 seconds. So it stacks basically 1 second up to 6 seconds. So you have to crit 6 times in quick succession to get the effect. And of course, as you're critting, you're going to lose some of the effect, which means you have to continue to crit multiple times to stack the effect up to the total maximum time of 6 seconds. Which is not really too difficult, depending on what kind of build you are. Like, if you're this kind of build, like a werewolf that is based around critical strikes, well, then you're going to get tons and tons of crits anyway. But if you're like a damage over time character who's not really too focused on critical strikes, and, like maybe you only get a couple handful here and there when you do a little bit of direct damage through maybe your basic skill or something, it doesn't really help you out all that much. There definitely are some more interesting ones if you're just interested in movement speed. In fact, I just did a video on one called the aspect of slaughter. That one is a little bit better if you want something for travel. This one is better if you're trying to get a buff for actually in combat, which is interesting. Although I really just don't like the fact that it's such a short duration that when you're outside of combat, it's just immediately gone. There are, of course, other boot aspects which could be more important for this slot, but if you don't have anything else to put here, it's a pretty decent one if you're utilizing the Ravenous power at the very least, because it will increase your attack speed a little bit. Of course, because you're scaling that attack speed with your movement speed. I think that's pretty much it for this one. I mean, you really can't really do much else other than that. Let me show you where you could potentially get this. Because it is a mobility aspect, it is only boots and amulet, I believe. So if you grab the gambling tool over on Diablo 4.life and you look up the Wind Striker aspect, it's going to tell you that it's boots, and it's going to tell you specifically that the druid has the best chance of getting them for gambling, and that's because he has the least number of competing aspect slots in the boot department, whereas the necromancer has the most boot aspects for some reason, so it's probably the least likely to get it on him if you need to gamble for it. Now, I don't particularly recommend gambling amulets for this because that would be silly. Just go to your druid if you got one and gamble that. And if you don't have a druid, you can do the barb, the rogue, or the sorcerer. Those are all pretty much the same. A little bit less than the druid, but still better than the necromancer at least. Thinking of you, Necro. I find that this aspect does fit well into some builds, and maybe it'll fit well into yours. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about the Wind Striker aspect. And as always, keep watching.